Alright, we're moving on to video 3 for lesson 10. This will be our last video for lesson 10. We ended with the anatomy of the small intestine, and now we're going to move on to the anatomy of the large intestine. So your large intestine is called the large intestine because it's much larger in diameter. But it's actually a lot shorter when it comes to how long it is. This is only going to be about 5 feet, where the small intestine could go anywhere from 6 to 20 feet. It's going to extend from that ileocecal valve, which is attached to the lower part of the small intestine, all the way to the anus. And the largest, or the biggest function, most important function of the large intestine is to absorb water. So it's divided into a bunch of different subdivisions. The cecum is the first part of the large intestine, and that's why it's called that ileocecal valve. Ileo for the ileum of the small intestine, and then cecal for the cecum portion. This is actually where the appendix is located, and really the appendix was once thought to be a organ that really didn't have a function, but we're finding out that it might be a good storage for good bacteria, so that if you ever have some sort of infection where you lose a bunch of good bacteria because you might have diarrhea, the appendixes can be a storehouse for that good bacteria. But they're still quite unsure what the overall function is. It's one of those structures that may have played a role in our early ancestors, but not so much for us now. Then we have the colon, which is divided into a bunch of different regions. First you have the ascending colon, which goes up, transverse colon, which goes over, and then the descending colon, which goes down the left side of the abdominal cavity. And then the last part of the colon is called the sigmoid colon, and that's easy to remember because it actually kind of looks like an S, so it's S-shaped for sigmoid. Then we have the rectum, and then the anal canal. And with the anal canal, it actually has two sphincter muscles. It has an internal one that's involuntary, and that's what kind of will give you that kind of signal up to your brain saying, oh my gosh, I think I need to go to the bathroom. But then the external anal sphincter is actually going to be voluntary, meaning that you can control it. And then both are going to be closed except for when you actually need to go to the bathroom. So here's the anatomy of our large intestine. So here's the cecum, which is that first portion. This would actually be the ileocecal valve here attached to the small intestine. You have your ascending colon, your transverse colon. The descending colon goes down. Then we have a sigmoid colon. See how it's kind of that S-shaped right here? Then we have the rectum and the anal canal. Now we're going to talk about our accessory organs. First, there is the teeth. Teeth allow us to masticate or chew. And with us, we have our deciduous teeth, which is our baby teeth. And then once we lose those, we have our permanent teeth come in. And when we look at our classifications of teeth, we have our canines, which are our finger-like or piercing, the incisors, which help for cutting, and the molars, which help with grinding. We're not really going to get into what teeth are made of, etc. That's a little bit out of our scope, but just know that, at first we have those milk teeth, and then as we age, we get our permanent teeth. Then we have our salivary glands, which are glands that dump their secretions into the mouth. So you have saliva, which is a mixture of serous, fluid, and mucus. And within that saliva is salivary amylase, which is an enzyme that helps with the digestion of starch. And this is when you, this is kind of a fun experiment if you want to do it at home. Get a cracker of some sort and chew it for a really long time, like 5 to 10 minutes. And it's almost going to start tasting like sugar. And that's because this salivary amylase breaks down that starch into more simple sugars. Once the food and saliva have been bound together, we call it a bolus. And then you have a few different glands. You have the parotid glands, which are behind the ears, right in front of the ears. And when these are inflamed, they cause that disease mumps that you've probably heard of. Then we have our submandibular and sublingual glands, which are going to be closer to the floor of the mouth. And I kind of think of those like when your mouth is watering, those are those two glands. Then we have the liver, which is the largest gland in the body. It's located underneath the diaphragm, and it makes what we call bile. And when you make too much of this bile, it's going to be stored by what we call the gallbladder. So the liver produces bile, and bile has almost a salt, like it's kind of interesting to talk about because it's not really a total liquid. It has salts in there that actually help to physically emulsify fats. So then the enzymes can come along and break it down even more. But this is actually a mechanical breakdown. Think about if you were to take a salty mixture and rub it onto something, it would break it down, and that's exactly what these bile salts do. Okay, so here's our liver here, super, super large organ. And when too much bile is produced, it gets stored right here in the gallbladder. Alright guys, that's it for lesson 10. Please watch again if you need to fill in the rest of your note guides, and we will move on to lesson 11. Have a great day.